The pearls were colder than she expected. Empress Su felt the moment the eunuch draped the necklace over her palms, an unbroken strand of moon-pale spheres, flawless and heavy, each one reflecting the dim lantern light like an unblinking eye. She had worn it once before, on the night the Son of Heaven first chose her from among 100 trembling girls. That night, the pearls had felt like destiny. Now they felt like judgment. The hall of tranquil longevity was silent, except for the distant creak of timber as winter wind pressed against the palace walls. Snow fell beyond the carved lattice windows, soundless and relentless, burying the capital in white. Inside, the air smelled of incense and old wood and fear that dared not speak its name. Empress Su knelt on the embroidered mat, her spine straight despite the ache that had lived in her bones since the verdict was whispered at dawn. She did not cry. Tears were a privilege of the living. Around her stood the machinery of Imperial mercy. 2 senior eunuchs waited behind her, hands folded within their sleeves, faces smooth as lacquered masks. An official from the Ministry of Rights stood to her left, eyes lowered, clutching the yellow silk scroll that bore the Emperor's command. No executioner was present. There never was. This was not death by blade or rope. This was a death meant to preserve dignity, to keep blood from staining dragon-carved floors. To die beautifully was a final duty of an empress. "Your Majesty," the official said softly, voice trembling despite years of court training, "the hour has come." Su closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, memories rose unbidden. She saw herself at 15, hands shaking as she practiced court bows. She smelled the plum blossoms in the inner gardens, heard the laughter of concubines who had once been her rivals and later her accusers. She remembered the Emperor's face, young then, wary and brilliant, a man who learned too quickly that power demanded sacrifice. She had loved him once. That, perhaps, was her first crime. The charge itself had been simple, almost elegant in its cruelty. Failure to restrain palace factions, allowing discord to fester within the inner court. No poison was found, no forged letters produced. Guilt was inferred, as it often was in Forbidden City, from silence, from rumor, from the Emperor's need to prove that even the highest woman in the realm was not beyond correction. Correction here meant death. The eunuch nearest her stepped forward and lifted the pearl necklace from her hands. It shimmered briefly in the lantern light before disappearing behind her neck. The touch of it against her skin made her shiver. Pearls were symbols of purity, of heaven's favor. In life, they adorned empresses. In death, they became instruments of erasure. "Please," Su said quietly, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "Allow me to arrange my sleeves." The official hesitated, then nodded. Even now, ritual demanded courtesy. She smoothed the crimson silk of her robe, fingers lingering on the phoenix embroidered over her heart. Each stitch had been sewn by palace women, whose names history would never record. How many lives had been spent perfecting the image of imperial harmony? How many would be erased to maintain it? Behind her, the eunuchs raised a necklace. The pearls slid against one another with a faint clicking sound, gentle, almost musical. Su inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with incense and cold air, anchoring herself in the moment. Fear came then, sharp and undeniable, clawing at her chest. She did not fight it. To fight was useless. To endure was everything. As the necklace tightened, pressure blossomed at her throat, firm but careful. This was not meant to be messy. The eunuchs had been trained for this, how to pull evenly, how to avoid marks, how to end a life without offending the image of imperial grace. Her vision blurred, lantern light fractured into halos. In those final heartbeats, Empress Su understood the truth that history rarely recorded. That power in the palace was not held but loaned, and the cause of failure was not just death but silence. No chronicle would speak of her fear, her love, her years of careful governance. She would become a footnote, deposed, disciplined, corrected. The pearls pressed harder. Somewhere far away, a bell rang the hour. As darkness closed in, Sue's last thought was not of the emperor, nor of heaven, but the necklace itself. How something so beautiful could be fashioned into an instrument of ending. How easily splendor became a noose when authority demanded it. The pearls held, and the palace remained silent. The snow did not stop when Empress Sue died. By dawn, the courtyards of the Forbidden City lay buried beneath a flawless white shroud, as if heaven itself sought to conceal what had occurred in the hall of tranquil longevity. Servants swept paths in silence, their brooms whispering against stone. No one spoke her name. No one needed to. In the palace, absence was louder than mourning. The body was discovered officially at the hour of the tiger. A physician from the Imperial Medical Bureau entered, bowed, and confirmed what everyone already knew. There were no bruises, no broken skin. The pearl necklace lay coiled neatly beside her, restored to an object of beauty now that its work was done. It would be returned to the treasury, cleansed and catalogued, ready to adorn another woman when the court deemed the time right. Death, like everything else in the palace, was recycled. By midday, a decree was read aloud in the outer court. The former Empress Sue, having failed in virtue and harmony, has met her end by imperial mercy. Let this serve as a warning and a correction. The words were precise, impersonal, and devastating. Officials knelt, foreheads pressed to frozen stone, responding in unison. Obedience echoed louder than grief. Inside the inner court, fear took root. Concubines whispered behind silk screens. Maids avoided eye contact, walking faster through corridors they had once strolled. Even the eunuchs, men carved by survival, lowered their voices. Everyone understood what Empress Sue's death truly meant. If the highest woman in the realm could be undone without public accusation, then no one was safe. Lady May understood this better than most. She stood in her chambers, staring at her reflection in a bronze mirror, hands clenched at her sides. The emperor had favored her for 3 years now. Once, that would have meant security. Today, it felt like a blade hovering above her neck. She had admired Empress Sue from afar. Her restraint, her silence, the way she never openly struck back at rivals. May had believed that careful obedience was enough. Sue's death shattered that illusion. Pack away the pearls, May told her maid abruptly. The young girl froze. My lady, all of them, May said, her voice tight. Necklaces, hairpins. I don't want them near me. The maid obeyed without question, though confusion flickered across her face. Pearls were symbols of favor. To refuse them was unthinkable. But May had learned the lesson already. Favor was a trap disguised as honor. Across the palace, in the hall of mental cultivation, the emperor sat alone. He had dismissed his attendants earlier than usual. The yellow silk curtain hung motionless, cutting him off from the world. On the table before him lay the jade seal of state, the symbol of absolute authority. Beside it rested the memorials of the day, petitions about grain shortages, border skirmishes, ritual observances, and beneath them, a single folded report. Execution completed without incident. He did not open it. The emperor pressed his fingers to his temples. He told himself that this was necessary. Harmony demanded sacrifice. The inner court had grown restless, factions multiplying like shadows at dusk. An example had to be made. An empress could not be allowed to become a figurehead for dissent. Still, when he closed his eyes, he saw pearls slipping through pale fingers. He had ordered her death with a stroke of ink. No raised voice, no visible anger. That was the burden of rulership. To kill without appearing cruel. To destroy without admitting fear. Yet fear lingered. If an empress could fall, what did that say about the throne itself? That night, ritual demanded restraint. The emperor did not summon any woman to his chambers. He sat instead with a cup of cooling tea, listening to the wind scrape against palace roofs. Somewhere in the inner court, a woman sobbed quietly, thinking herself unheard. She was wrong. Grief, like ambition, seeped through walls. In the days that followed, the palace adjusted, as it always did. A new empress dowager sent formal condolences, to no one in particular. The Bureau of Astronomy selected an auspicious date for the announcement of a new empress. Months away, distant enough to suggest deliberation rather than haste. But beneath the rituals, something had shifted. The women of the inner court began to watch one another more closely. Words were chosen with surgical care. Alliances hardened. Silence became a weapon. If Empress Su had believed restraint would save her, her death proved otherwise. The palace did not reward innocence. It rewarded awareness. Lady May, walking one evening to the covered corridor near the lotus pond, paused as snowmelt dripped from the eaves. She thought of the pearls locked away in her chest, useless now, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter. She understood, with sudden clarity, that survival here required more than obedience. It required foresight, control, the ability to bend without breaking, and to recognize when beauty itself had become dangerous. Empress Su had died beautifully. The palace had devoured her all the same. And somewhere, deep within its vermilion walls, the next victim was already being chosen. Spring arrived late that year, hesitant and uncertain, as though even the seasons feared the palace. Plum blossoms opened along the inner courtyards, their petals drifting onto stone paths scrubbed clean of winter's secrets. Officially, harmony had been restored. Unofficially, the Forbidden City breathed like a wounded animal, quiet, watchful, ready to lash out again. Lady May had not been summoned in weeks. Once, such absence would have filled her with relief. Now it felt like neglect sharpened into intent. Favor withdrawn without explanation was more dangerous than open displeasure. She had seen it before, women fading from notice, then vanishing entirely, their names erased with bureaucratic efficiency. She did not intend to vanish. Each morning, May performed her rituals with precision. Hair dressed simply, robes modest in color, movements measured. She spoke little, listened much. She observed which concubines received silk, which eunuchs lingered near which doors, which officials' wives sent gifts through back channels. Information, she had learned, was the only currency that did not tarnish. And yet, despite her caution, rumors began to coil around her name. They came disguised as concern. Lady May grows too influential. Her family gains promotions too quickly. She weeps too rarely for the former Empress. The last accusation cut deepest. Grief, it seemed, was now mandatory. One afternoon, she was summoned not to the Emperor's chambers, but to the Hall of Gentle Harmony, a place reserved for correction. Her hands remained steady as she followed the eunuch through the corridor, but her pulse betrayed her. Inside, the atmosphere was deceptively calm. Incense burned low. Tea steamed untouched on a lacquered table. Seated opposite her was Consort Lin, older, sharper-eyed, her smile thin as silk thread. "My dear May," Lin said warmly, "you look pale." May bowed. "I am honored by your concern." Lin studied her for a long moment. "You were close to the Emperor," she said lightly. "So close, some say, that you forget the lessons of restraint." The words were soft. The meaning was lethal. May chose each syllable as if stepping across thin ice. Favor is a reflection of His Majesty's will, not my ambition. Lin's smile widened just enough to reveal satisfaction. A wise answer. Still, wisdom must be seen, not merely spoken. A eunuch approached then, carrying a small tray. On it lay a pearl necklace. May's breath caught before she could stop herself. It was shorter than the one Empress Su had worn, the pearls slightly irregular but unmistakable. Lin watched her reaction with interest. "A gift," Lin said, "from the Emperor, a sign that his regard for you has not diminished." May knew the truth the moment the words left Lin's mouth. This was not a gift. It was a test. To accept pearls now was to invite comparison. To refuse them was to suggest fear, or worse, defiance. She bowed again, lower this time, and lifted the necklace from the tray. The pearls were cool, smooth, innocent in their beauty. Around her, the silence thickened. "His Majesty is most gracious," May said. Lin nodded, pleased. Wear it tonight." The order was not optional. That evening, May stood before her mirror as dusk bled into night. Her maid fastened the necklace carefully, fingers trembling. The pearls rested against May's throat, a soft weight that made her skin prickle. "They suit you," the maid whispered, trying to smile. May said nothing. When she entered the Emperor's chambers, he was standing by the window, gazing out at the darkened courtyard. He turned as she approached, his expression unreadable. "You wear them," he observed. "Yes, your Majesty." He stepped closer, eyes flicking briefly to the necklace before returning to her face. "Do you know why pearls are favored at court?" May hesitated. "Because they symbolize purity and harmony. And obedience," he added quietly. The words settled between them like dust. He dismissed her soon after. No touch, no summons to stay the night. Just observation. Measurement. May returned to her chambers with her heart pounding. She understood now. Empress Sue's death had not ended the lesson. It had begun it. The pearl necklace was not merely an instrument of execution. It was a reminder, worn, admired, feared. That night, May dreamed of pearls sinking into water, dragging her down as she struggled for air. The next morning, a maid from Consort Lin's household was found dead near the laundry quarters. Official cause, illness. Unofficial understanding, a warning. The palace was tightening its grip. May stood at her window, fingers brushing the pearls at her throat, and realized with chilling clarity that survival would require something Empress Sue had never wielded. Not restraint, but strategy. And somewhere in the silent corridors of power, the necklace waited patiently, as it always had, for the moment when beauty would once again be asked to kill. By summer, the palace had learned to smile again. Lotus flowers bloomed in the ponds, their broad leaves concealing dark water beneath. Court musicians played in shaded halls. Official records spoke of stability, prosperity, and renewed harmony within the inner court. To an outsider, the Forbidden City appeared serene. Lady May knew better. Harmony in the palace was not peace. It was pressure, carefully distributed so nothing shattered too loudly. She had worn the pearl necklace exactly 3 times. Never longer than required. Never without witnesses. Each time, she felt its meaning settle deeper into her flesh, an invisible imprint at her throat. She had learned to keep her breathing slow, her posture elegant, even as fear pulsed beneath her skin. But fear, she had discovered, could be shaped. The turning point came quietly, as most true shifts of power did. A minor eunuch, one of the overlooked, the expendable, slipped while serving tea in the hall of gentle harmony. The porcelain shattered. Tea splashed across ritual scrolls awaiting inspection. The mistake was small. The punishment was not. Consort Lin ordered him flogged publicly. May stood among the watching women, her face carefully composed as a eunuch's cries echoed across the courtyard. She did not flinch. She did not look away. And she did not miss the way Lin's eyes flicked toward her, searching for weakness. May offered none. That night, May sent a gift, not to the Emperor, not Consort Lin, but to the Bureau of Rights. A set of ancient commentaries on ritual mercy, accompanied by a note written in careful, modest script. It did not accuse. It reminded. Within days, whispers shifted. Consort Lin's name began to surface in quiet complaints. Excessive severity, disruption of ritual balance, cruelty unbecoming of imperial grace. Nothing direct, nothing provable, but enough. May understood in the palace's deepest rule. Execution was not always the end. Sometimes it was the threat of becoming unnecessary. The Emperor summoned May again. This time, he gestured for her to sit. "You have been careful," he said, studying her over a cup of tea. "Careful enough to make others uneasy." May lowered her gaze. Care is the duty of one who serves beneath the dragon. A pause. "Do you fear the necklace?" he asked suddenly. Her heart stuttered, but her voice did not. "I respect what it represents." Which is, she met his eyes then, a calculated risk. That beauty exists at the pleasure of power, and that power must decide whether it wishes to be remembered for elegance or for waste. Silence stretched between them. For the first time since Empress Su's death, the Emperor looked tired. "My predecessor used the blade," he said quietly. "Blood invites ghosts. Pearls do not." May inclined her head. "Ghosts remain, whether blood is spilled or not." A faint smile touched his lips, brief, sharp. "You would make a dangerous Empress." The words were not a promise. They were a warning. Weeks later, Consort Lin fell ill. The announcement was formal, restrained. She was to retire to a quiet palace compound to recover. No flogging, no necklace, no dramatic correction. Just removal. The palace exhaled. May did not celebrate. She understood the exchange she had just completed. Lin had been spared the pearls, but only because the threat of them had already done its work. That was the true function of the necklace. Not merely to kill, but to govern. One evening, as cicadas screamed in the trees, May stood alone in her chambers, the pearl necklace resting in her hands. She examined each sphere closely. They were imperfect up close. Tiny ridges, faint discolorations, flaws hidden by distance and reverence. She thought of Empress Su then, not as a cautionary tale, but as a woman who had believed virtue alone was sufficient, who had worn pearls without understanding their second purpose. May wrapped the necklace carefully in silk and placed it back into its box. She would wear it again if required. She would smile. She would bow. But she would never forget what lay beneath its beauty. Outside, the palace lanterns flickered to life, one by one, illuminating corridors where footsteps echoed softly, where power moved unseen, tightening and loosening its grip with elegant restraint. The knot, when it came, would not show, and that May knew was the most dangerous kind of all. The official announcement came in autumn. The leaves along the palace walls had begun to yellow, their edges curling inward as if retreating from the coming cold. On an auspicious morning selected by the Bureau of Astronomy, court officials assembled, robes immaculate, expressions reverent. The decree was read aloud with ceremonial gravity. By mandate of heaven and the will of the Son of Heaven, Lady May is elevated to the rank of Empress, entrusted with the harmony of the inner court and the moral balance of the realm. Kneeling on the stone floor, May lowered her forehead until it touched the ground. Her breath remained steady. Her hands did not tremble. She had won. Yet as the words echoed to the hall, she felt no triumph, only the quiet, suffocating weight of understanding. The coronation was magnificent. Silk banners rippled in the breeze. Bells chimed. Pearls adorned her crown, her sleeves, her throat. The court watched with admiration, envy, and fear in equal measure. They saw a woman perfected by survival, elevated by grace. They did not see the cost. That night, after the rituals were complete and the attendants dismissed, Empress May stood alone in her chambers. The candles burned low, shadows stretching across walls painted with scenes of eternal prosperity, scenes that lied without shame. Her reflection stared back at her from the bronze mirror, regal, composed, untouchable. At her throat lay the pearl necklace, not the same one Empress Su had worn, but its equal, carefully chosen, symbolically identical. The palace did not repeat objects, only meanings. May lifted the necklace and held it in her hands. She remembered the first time she had touched pearls with fear instead of delight. She remembered the eunuch's screams, the silence after Su's death, the way the Emperor's eyes had lingered on her throat as if measuring distance. Power had not freed her from the necklace. It had merely placed it closer. In the months that followed, May ruled with precision. She balanced factions, tempered punishments, rewarded restraint. The inner court grew quieter, more efficient. Fewer rumors reached the outer court. The emperor relied on her counsel more than he admitted. History would later call her reign harmonious. But harmony, May knew, was a cultivated illusion. One winter evening, a young consort was accused of forming an improper alliance with court officials. The evidence was thin. The pressure was not. Ministers whispered. The emperor hesitated. He summoned May. "She is careless," he said. "If I spare her, I appear weak. If I execute her, I invite fear." May listened, her face unreadable. "There is another way," she said at last. The hall was prepared discreetly. No public decree. No announcement. The consort was granted imperial mercy. When the pearl necklace was presented, the girl collapsed, sobbing, begging for poison instead. May watched from behind a screen, her heart tightening with a pain she had not felt in years. This time, May stepped forward. "Enough," she said. The room froze. She ordered the necklace removed. The consort was exiled, not executed, not forgiven, but erased from relevance. The message was clear without being fatal. Later that night, the emperor confronted her. "You undermine the symbol," he said quietly. "The pearls exist, so we do not have to debate mercy." May met his gaze without flinching. "Then they will one day be used on me." Silence followed. In that silence lay the truth neither of them could escape. Years later, after the emperor's death, after succession struggles and revised chronicles, Empress May would retire quietly, alive but diminished, her power surrendered before it could be taken. It was said she lived out her days in prayer, her jewels locked away, her neck always bare. Historians would argue whether she was wise or merely cautious. They would write extensively about pearl necklace executions, about elegance masking brutality, about a system that strangled its own to preserve order. They would list names, dates, ranks, but they would never fully capture the truth. That truth was this: the pearl necklace was never just an instrument of death. It was a lesson worn close to the skin, a reminder that in absolute power, beauty is never innocent, and mercy is rarely free. Empress Sue learned it too late. Empress May learned it in time. And the palace endured, not because it was just, but because it taught its inhabitants the most dangerous moral of all, that survival, when mistaken for virtue, can become another kind of execution,